Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a video game review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Kingdom of Amula. Apologize for not saying the name correctly. Re-Reckoning, a remastered of the 2012 release, originally released back on the PS3 and Xbox 360 for the PlayStation 4. Game is also available on the Xbox One and PC via Steam, but we'll be focusing on the PS4 version. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link down in the description of this YouTube video, or you could click on the card that will appear up on this YouTube video though. In 2012, EA, along with developers, I think 3A Studios and Big Head Games, if I'm saying the name correctly, released a game called Kingdom of Amula Reckoning though. This was a game that had involvement of many people, including Todd McFarlane, the creator of the Spawn series, to folks who worked on the Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, to even former Major League Baseball player Kurt Schilling, if I'm saying the name correctly though, were all involved in this project, and this was sort of a project that he wanted to do though. However, the history of it though has been very, very awkward, and it involved the state of Rhode Island, and it involved like mismanagement of a lot of money and put the studio on debt to the point that 3A Studios went bankrupt and all that stuff. It was sort of a bizarre episode, to the point that no one knew what would happen to this series and all that stuff, despite the series getting positive reviews and gamers actually liking it and all that stuff. Still, the whole controversy kind of just threw a wrench at what will happen to the future of this series, much like it was with the Darksiders series following THQ going bankrupt and all that stuff. Of course, that all changed when THQ Nordic came back, and basically they started buying back all their IPs that they once owned. Darksiders was one of those, and one that was interesting was they were purchasing the rights to Kingdom of Amula though. And so basically the game got a second lease on life, being released on the PS4 and the Xbox One. And now that the games are officially out though, I will say the games are certainly are as enjoyable as it was when it originally came out in 2012, even though this remaster is far from being 100% perfect though. So why don't we get started with the pros and the cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And the first one I do want to point out is the story. And I will say, even for a game that originally came out in 2012, the story is still as enjoyable and all. The world of Amalur, A-M-A-L-U-R, apologize for not saying the name correctly, is still fascinating even after all these years. It's as fascinating as the world of, say, like what Skyrim or the Elder Scrolls is and all that stuff. So from a story standpoint, it still holds up very well, especially meeting all the different characters and factions and all that. The next thing I want to talk about is the gameplay, and this to me is sort of the meat and bones of the game, and the gameplay is really good. The thing is that it is an action RPG, and the thing about this is though that you could really approach the game like any way you want to. I mean, yes, there are choices and consequences, kind of similar to what you see in games like Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim or the Fallout and all that stuff. But the game also gives you enough flexibility to kind of like make the character you want to make. Focus on melees, focus on, archery, focusing on, magic and all that stuff, or do like a combination of all the things, like a jacks of all trade to be exact. For me though, my approach is I focus my character to be a mixture between like a knight with like a sword and a shield, and the ability to use magic, particularly like a staff or something like that. So the game really encourages you to come up with find an approach that works with your character the best and all that stuff. It's kind of like mix and match and all that, and it really works. And I think this is the solid part of the game though. The gameplay is just top notch and all that stuff. So you basically do have a lot of options to customize your character, and also follow some of the stuff that is in games like Skyrim. Like, you can steal from other people, but you have to be very careful though, because if they catch you, you could, get yourself in a lot of trouble. Although if you focus heavily on persuasion, you can sort of talk your way out to a certain degree. But Anyway, in gameplay though, it is still as enjoyable as it was when the game came out originally in 2012, and it still holds up very well. And last but not least, I want to talk about some of the improvements that they made, and some of it does fall on two areas. First of all, I will say from the visual standpoint though, it doesn't look that bad or anything like that. I mean, some of the art style still looks nice and all that stuff. They kind of cleaned up in some areas from the original release back on the PS3 and the Xbox 360 though. And assuming I could be wrong on this, but based on my time with the game though, it does run at a good 60 frames per second, which is certainly nice. I mean, this isn't a fast-paced game like the way like Doom or Doom Eternal is or anything like that, but it is nice that they got the game running at 60 frames per second nevertheless. So visually it still looks good and all, and the fact that it runs at 60 frames per second is definitely a plus indeed, for me though, that is. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which are the cons. So take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning for the PlayStation 4. As I mentioned before, the game's also available on the Xbox One and PC via Steam. So now that we gave you the pros, why don't we give you the cons? And the first one I do want to talk about is also the visuals in the game. Now, I mentioned in the pros, though, that the visuals were an improvement for basically was an improvement from the PS3 and the Xbox 360 version, which is true though. But if you're expecting the kind of visual upgrades on the same level as, say, like Episode 1 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake or the remake of Resident Evil 2 or 3, you might want to tempt your expectations. It's not, the visuals are nowhere near that kind of level in terms of a remake though. It doesn't look bad or anything like that. The character design still looks nice and everything like that, but it excuse me, but most of it is basically just, you know, cleaning up some areas and all that stuff. So it still looks good, but don't expect the kind of remake that Resident Evil 2 or 3 had, or the Final Fantasy VII or Episode 1 of Final Fantasy VII Remake to be exact. So visuals, like I said before, they look good, just don't expect it to be anything spectacular or anything like that. The next thing I do want to talk about is the loading time in the game, and I will admit I'm not hugely bothered by it, but it is somewhat annoying to be exact though, and you're going to run into this a lot. Most of the time you run into this every time you either enter into a brand new area and all that stuff, and I'm talking about like when you start entering like a dungeon, or if you go into like a house or anything like that. Loading times can be somewhat long and somewhat annoying and all like that. I mean, for the most part, the game is open world and all that stuff, and when you visit a town or something like that, you're not going to run into a problem like anything like that. You're not going to run into like a big loading time or anything like that. Like I said before, it's mostly when you enter in like, say, like a dungeon or a building or something like that. That's when it could get a little bit long, and for me, I felt like it took like maybe like a minute or so. So it's somewhat annoying. Nothing that ruins the game. It's just annoying and all that stuff. And last but certainly not least, the final con I want to point out is that there are some odd sort of like glitches or bugs here and there based on my time with the game. While I won't go as far as saying that the game crashed or booted me out or anything like that, I didn't run into any of those kind of problems and all. The game still runs and plays well. Where I started to see most of the issues come up is basically during the cutscenes. There are times when basically the camera will get into sort of an odd angle and all, and that can be a little awkward to when the game gives you options to choose or something like that. I found myself pushing the button, you know, I think it's the triangle button or it's the X one, to one of those though. Basically trying to make my choice and it doesn't respond, and you may have to hit it more than once. So there are some odd things here and there, to the fact that the game, the lock-on is almost like non-existent in this game. Again, just depends on what kind of play style you make your character and all, but it's just sort of there's just some odd things here and there. It feels as though there may have been some areas they could have ironed out a little bit more with it, though. Like I said, nothing that made the game unplayable, nothing where the game crashed or anything like that, so I didn't run into that kind of problem, to be exact, but there are some odd things here and there that I found during my time playing the game, though. Overall, I will say the game, Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning, though, it's still an enjoyable game as it was when it came out back in 2012 and all. I mean, the gameplay is probably the big meat and bones of this game, and it's still as fun as it was when it originally came out, and the story's still good, and I like that they made some improvements to the visuals, even if it's not really a full-blown remake or anything like that, although I do like the fact that it runs at 60 frames per second, though. The big one for me is that the loading times can be a little bit annoying, and the odd things that are in the game, like the camera angle being at an odd place during the cutscenes, though. But nevertheless, I still enjoy this game when it originally came out back in 2012, and I still enjoy it now, though. So, overall, I think it's a good game. If you're a fan of games like, say, Skyrim, or Witcher 3, or Dragon Dogma, or even, say, like Breath of the Wild, maybe not as much Breath of the Wild, more like Skyrim or Dragon Dogma, though, then you'll probably enjoy Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning, though. I'm glad THQ got the rights and brought this game back to life. Here's hoping the game does well enough at the very least, though, that this time we get an actual sequel to it. I certainly would be down to seeing a sequel to, or another entry into the Kingdom of Amalur series, to be exact. And although we don't know if this will never happen, if they somehow manage to bring this game over to the Nintendo Switch, I definitely would be down with that, though. Again, that's up to THQ Nordic, and that's up to whether or not it's possible to bring it to the Switch. But if they do, I certainly would be open to that. I could see a game like that definitely benefiting on a system like the Switch, especially since we have games like Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, Dragon Dogma, Skyrim, and Breath of the Wild. So I'm hoping they could bring this over. I hope it's the remaster version, but time will tell if that happens, though. But in either way, though, if you missed out on it on the first time around, consider giving this one another go, though. I enjoyed the game when it came out back in 2012, and I still enjoy it even after all these years. Now, I'm hoping that it gets a better shot than it did back in 2012, and like I said before, I am hoping that a sequel does happen, though. Okay, this concludes my video review of Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning. Again, I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts of Kingdom of Amalur Re-Reckoning, though? Are you glad that this series is getting another second chance in life and all? Did you enjoy the game when it originally came out back in 2012? Are you enjoying it now, though? Which version would you consider be getting? PS4, Xbox One, PC via Steam, though? Are you hoping the game does well enough that basically we get an actual full-blown sequel in any way? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. The links will be in the description down below. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!